I see you found our little hiding spot in the universe. Don't get too comfortable. This is a place where you will find those with an experience that's out of this world, or possibly deep within your life. I welcome you to the Oracles with James Tyson. Lean forward and listen. We will pull you into a supernatural journey with guests from around the world, each one experiencing some of the most extraordinary phenomena this wee planet has to offer. Now, here are the Oracles with James Tyson.
Thank you, Liam, and thank you, listener, for tuning into this episode of the Oracles with James Tyson. I am James Tyson, and today I bring you Eugene Braxton. He's been called America's mystic. Well, what is a mystic? It can refer to those who have attained insight in ultimate or hidden truths. Okay, that's Eugene. He's certainly done that. It also means someone who's gone through a transformation supported by various practices and experiences. And I'd say, yeah, that would be definitely Eugene. See, Eugene, ever since he was a young boy, had the ability and was very confident in astral travel, out-of-body experiences. So at night he would rise from his body and off he'd go through the ether, arms spread out wide, and he would just travel around and, pass the other people as they were doing their out-of-body things. And he just thought everybody could do that. This came in handy at the age of 15 when he drowned. Was it a near-death experience? Well, you can call it that. I call it a death experience because his broken body was completely still, filled with water, and he went up. His soul left it and traveled on. His energy moved from his body and went to a location. And he, because of his experiences for years and years of astral travel, had the ability to remember every detail in his out-of-body experience as a result of his drowning. And then, of course, zipping back into the body, kicking his feet up, and off he went. As a result of that, we go through a number of investigations. People thought they'd come and poke and prod at him, and it was one of these people that decided he was a mystic because they were quite impressed with the types of things he did. One of them was Dr. Atwater and the Dean of Near-Death Research and editor of the Journal of Near-Death Studies, Dr. Bruce Grayson. They were the world authorities in this, and I think it was Dr. Grayson who coined the term mystic when talking about Eugene. And it was very interesting. He was not kind of pushed aside and said, okay, this is something you're going to end up having to do, and do this report, fill this thing out, and we're going to call you a nut, and off you went. Well, no, they took it seriously, and they studied him for quite a while and put out a number of academic papers in regards to Eugene. And later on, this led to Eugene putting together a book, America's Mystic Solves Near-Death Riddle. It's kind of interesting if you take that title to heart. America's Mystic Solves Near-Death Riddle. If you read his book and you understand Eugene, you would know that there isn't anything more to the near-death riddle. Like, okay, I had a near-death experience. I traveled above. I saw myself in the hospital looking down on my body, and eventually I went back into my body. Or I went down this light. My grandmother came through, and we went on, and it was so beautiful and felt so good, and I wanted to stay, but I got told I had to go back, and whack, I was back in the body. People say, oh, I don't know what happened. Could it have been A? Could it have been B? Who the heck knows? Well, if you read his book, it basically says this is what happens. And it was proved by, whether it was Dr. Grayson or Atwater, all the studies it went through. It's basically done. It's not that convoluted. Some of these world authorities on experiences in these things are basically telling Eugene to keep up the good work and telling people what actually happens when you have a near-death experience. It shouldn't be anything mysterious anymore. We've had enough of these people who have it and talk about it, and you probably have somebody in your family, some old grandfather who may or may not want to talk about his time that he had a heart attack and got zipped to the hospital in the ambulance. But he had a near-death experience, has some memory of what happened when he was on the other side. And you can write that off to be, as your brain is shutting down and everything is going on in the trauma, you have all these different experiences mentally, therefore you make up all this stuff. And now that we talk about near-death experiences, are we actually expecting something like that when we die temporarily? And therefore we create it ourselves, because it's like that planted information. You've got this little spark planted in there that there will be a near-death experience, therefore we create it. Well, it's been done. Like Eugene did this years ago. It's been studied, from Temple University on. These things are interesting because it's new to anyone who's experiencing it. But the research has already been done. Eugene had experienced it. He had the ability to remember every little detail in his experience on the other side and talked about it. And it was studied, and the university professors poked and prodded at him, and of course they said, yeah, he definitely did, and he remembered everything. And his experience followed by many, many years of extremely lucid dreams. Now, lucid dreams, by definition, are that, I just remember, I know that I'm dreaming when I'm dreaming. They don't have to be filled with colors and bouncing and all this stuff, but his dreams, his visions, and other strange encounters had led to whole his skills and to further define mystic about Eugene Braxton. Once he gets talking about this stuff and going through his memories, he almost channels. It's very interesting to listen to Eugene describe his experiences because it's a flow of consciousness. A lot of times when I've interviewed Eugene, I will try to put the little kids' bumper lanes up in the bowling alley, like to keep him on track. Today, I just thought, I'm going to let Eugene, him flow. I'll ask a question, and Eugene is just going to go. And the different things that he speaks about and the different things that comes through Eugene, it's amazing. Now, Eugene, I think he's retired now. He worked a lot with police. He worked at a university. He hasn't been, quote unquote, woo-woo his entire life. He hasn't been the hippie. He hasn't been out in the metaphysical la-la land. Actually, a lot of my friends are. But he's the type of guy that is pretty black and white. But when he gets going on this, it's very, very interesting to listen to him. I want to keep that pure for you. You have to pay attention because he is going to explain things. When he is in his Eugene flow, it is amazing the information that comes through. Absolutely amazing, particularly around the term God and where he is going and the energies that he feels. It's very, very interesting. And just a little bit of the background on Eugene, too. He was dropped off at a church that literally swaddled on the snowy footsteps of a Philadelphia church and given up for adoption. And like, that is a movie. The priest opens the doors of the church because somebody knocked at it, and there's this little swaddled baby on the snowy front steps. Well, that's how Eugene appears into life at that point. And no, for those of you who are thinking, he was planted by aliens or something like that. No, later in life he did find out a little more about his family. But it's amazing who this guy is. He's a father. He's had an entire life, and now he kind of sits back and he wants to talk about. I want to introduce you to Eugene. Eugene, how are you doing?
James, I've been good, my man. How about you? How you been?
I have been well. It's been an interesting few weeks. I was down in, McMinnville, Oregon at a UFO festival. I am heading down to the Preston Castle in Northern California coming up in about a few weeks, mid-June, and from there down to AlienCon in LA. So bouncing around a bit and trying to get out doing stuff.
That's good that you're in the States. Do you think you'll ever come to the Midwest or East Coast?
The East Coast? I hope so. The closest I've been is it was out in Harrisburg and Gettysburg a couple of years ago.
That's right there. It's Gettysburg's like 11 miles from Philly.
Really? Well,
yeah, 18,
the front door, because I will be going to Gettysburg again. Yeah, we'll
dance on the table.
Yeah, we'll have to go. I'll hit you up and we'll go out and poke at the ghosts at the battlefield.
Yeah.
And I'm going to Sturgis, South Dakota in August, but that's
Wow.
It's redneck capital of the friggin' world. Yeah, I was going motorcycle ride with my buddy down there and see what kind of shenanigans, and I got to get. I'm just saving up bail money right now. And yeah, it was
a nice country out there, though. Yeah,
it is. It was really cool. I went past the Little Bighorn Memorial and actually the location, and did the tour there, and ate some really good food actually there, and up out to Devil's Tower in Wyoming, and yeah, I had a lot of fun. So we're gonna do that again this summer if the weather agrees with me. But enough about me.
Yeah,
that's it. Thanks everybody for tuning in and learning about my holidays this year. Eugene, tell my listener exactly, not exactly, but you've got your book is still out. America's Mystic Solves the Near-Death Riddle, and I love that title because it's like there is no near-death riddle anymore. It's just you solved it because you've always had the ability since a really small child. You did out-of-body things. Okay, let's start there. What as a little kid, tell me about your out-of-body stuff you used to do, and you thought basically that was what normal people did.
Yeah, James. Yeah, the out of body started early, at about age 6, and they were intertwined with lucid dreams, where you realize that you're dreaming, and also with regular dreams and out of bodies of varying levels of consciousness, where you would have an out of body experience where you were fully awake and invisible in real life, or you could have an out of body experience where you were flying through the air in a standing position yet almost fully asleep, and you can look around and see other people flying through the air asleep too or awake. That's an interesting thing. So they were interspersed with the dreams and lucid dreams. So after about 6 years of that, by the time I was 11 or 12, I could distinguish between what was an out-of-body, what was a dream, what was a lucid dream, flying dreams, the sleep paralysis, which is a big thing in a lot of esoteric things we can talk about. But that's how it started, with the out-of-bodies, and then the dreams and lucid dreams were interspersed, completely intertwined, until I could tell exactly which one was happening, and I knew what to do or what to expect. So that's how that started. Yeah.
Did you have some, when you were doing that, did you have some control of yourself in the out of body stuff?
At first, no. It was forced to watch what was happening, forced to go along with it, and forced to experience it. And at age 9, I did ask for it. And at age 11, it started happening, in earnest, really happening, where I was 11 then. It could take more than I could psychologically than at age 7. And at age 7, probably more things like dreams, running dreams, monster dreams, stuff like that. There were drowning dreams, but future dreams. But, yeah, the dreams out of bodies were interspersed. And I got fully used to them, where I could begin to control them. After recognizing over and over and over the steps to an out-of-body, which are in the book, or I could go through now, I began to recognize what was happening, observe it enough. And remember, this went on week after week for 10 straight years. I had about, altogether, about 12,000 out-of-bodies at different levels of consciousness. So I got really used to them. And then after a while, after say 12, I was able to control them, the dreams, the lucid dreams, the out-of-bodies, and play with them. And some interesting things with all of those things. And the out-of-body is actually the key, and so are dreams. Dreams are the doorway to all these psychic experiences. It's a gateway experience that will lead. It's a safe, natural way to get to the other abilities and the other experiences through the dreams, and which is like a cousin to the out-of-bodies.
When you were doing the out-of-bodies and you found you can control them, and you kind of were having fun with them and playing with them, did you travel any further than where you lived, or was it could you go up upstate kind of thing and go visit or go look at stuff at night?
Yeah, a lot of times it was a spontaneous, like during experience, it was a spontaneous thought, like traveling. Like you might see something that might remind you of being in a grassy meadow, or might remind you about going to China. You might wake up an out-of-body form in your room, see a book about China, and decide, I want to go there. Then you're automatically there. Or you can actually experience super flying there at super speed. In those like astral experiences, it's thought actuated. So what you think about happens. If you picture yourself or sit or want to be buried up to your neck in sand, it'll happen. Until you unpicture yourself or picture yourself somewhere else. Another interesting thing is you may be talking to someone in those dream and astral planes, and they're kind of like they're all in the same room. They're just different veils, and when your experience and knowledge of those things develops, you'll be able to see through more and more veils of dream consciousness and out-of-body consciousness. But, the traveling happens naturally. Usually spontaneous thought brings it on, or you can pre-plan it seconds in advance, or when you go to sleep. You can say, I want to go here in astral body form, and you'll find yourself there. And usually the signals that you're there, you'll remember, this is exactly where I wanted to go. In the dream, like to travel to. Mm-hmm. Suppose you want to know the future, know the past, or know how to dunk a basketball. During your sleep, your astral body would come out and go to that place where you could know that thing. And while dreaming about it, you would realize this is what I wanted to dream about, and you would literally wake up in the dream, in like and then experience what your request. But you can train the mind to do work for you while you sleep. And that's worth more than any kind of money, book, anything like that. Because it's a constant free genie that you literally have, like the genie in the bottle story. People have it. They kind of don't really realize it.
From the books I was reading, or at least looking at when I was 13 and 14, wow, I would have really liked to go to those places. The ones that are hidden under your mattress. You mentioned the veils in dream state. Can you kind of amplify a little bit on that? Like, I was trying to picture that. I have my eyes shut while you're talking, and I'm picturing what you're saying, and that one was really, really interesting. I'd like to spend a little more time. Can you describe what you mean by veils?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's always good to, when you get asked questions that no one else has asked you, because you get to think about it, and the question's a good, logical one, and interesting one. Then you get to, it just pulls. It's good to have good questions, pull info out. Mm-hmm. So yeah, those veils that I was speaking about. So they have to do with there's like veils of consciousness. And just as everyone has like a level of, or there are levels of consciousness, like a lot of times the researchers will say, all right, let's do the we're going to figure out what consciousness is and solve it. But it's such a spiritual, invisible, and illusionary thing that just like Einstein said, the best way to do it, and the scientists know that this is true, is through direct experience, which usually and mainly the experiencers have. So the scientists, researchers realizes that the regular people themselves are the best ones to get to extract the information from. That's how they kind of see it. They're the gold mine of the info. But what they want usually is one who has had psychic experiences at a young age and then grew into them or developed them. Instead of getting them suddenly at age 24. and then kind of going through what's happening to me years for 10 or 15 years till they finally figure out. They rather have someone who's did it naturally at a young age, so by the time they're in the 16 or 17, they know, they're a pro at it.
Yeah.
But the veils, James, there's, with consciousness, just like when we go to sleep, we first lay there for a few minutes, our eyes are still adjusting to the darkness. Then with a few breathings, or just naturally after a full day, our body starts to loosen up, and we know the room is locked, the house is locked, everything's cool, everything's tight, the dog's out there. Everything's safe to go into a deeper, more relaxed slumber where the body starts to relax. And it's more of like an inner thinking. And then you get into the stage where you're not even moving at all, and then the thoughts slow down. So all those are subtle levels of consciousness and lower levels. And by going through those lower levels, especially if we have continuity of consciousness, where the consciousness extends, continues on as your body goes to sleep, your mind continues to be awake and aware, more subtly aware, but still dimly aware. Just like you can be half asleep while drifting off, and you're going to sleep, and someone comes in the room. It does it silently, or they open your door, or they, and you realize that they're there. So you become aware that you're aware as you're going to sleep of both the physical world and the dream or invisible world, which is actually the astral world. So we want to be aware of the things that happen to us in our dream and invisible and spiritual life, because that's really half of us with most people. Especially nowadays when people are realizing that there are other things outside of the physical world and outside of their in their inner self. Mm-hmm. The veils. So there are different levels of consciousness, different levels of sleep consciousness, and the way to observe them and experience them is have continuity of consciousness, which can be easily attained for free just by doing those rhythmic breathing exercises. And those breathing exercises, they are the bridge that will lead you to cross over into the dream dimension, fully conscious. You'll be able to remember in sequential order exactly what happened. And there's a lot of info and adventure along the way if you're fully awake during the dream experience as it leads into it. Artists and scientists and stuff in that mid-range between awake and sleep realize that they're in a direct conscious, they're in direct contact with their subconscious, their higher mind, and information is exchanged there. A lot of times they do remember and get up and write it down, whether it be a piece of music or an equation. A lot of times it's not remembered, but they remember it later as they're walking down the street. Something pops into their mind, the answer, how to do the dunk shot, or shoot the arrow, or whatever. And it's literally like whatever you're thinking about. That's why, and in these things, when you can control your thoughts and emotions, that helps the best. I always say to be like a Mr. Spock type, where you're just observing and absorbing.
Is the veils the sleep levels?
The veils are the layers in between the different levels of consciousness. They are sleep levels in essence, yes.
Okay. So, what I want you to say is just say basically what you just said. And start with the word so. So the veils. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. So the veils are various layers that divide the levels of consciousness, whether awake or asleep. And when we go to sleep, we usually notice the veils, the different veils, or stages. You could call them stages or levels. But visually, in our subconscious and our awake mind goes by visual, communicates in the visual language, things that we can see. That's important too. And so you can visually observe these levels. And there's also a lot of illusions, the illusionary veils. With enough time and experience, the person can perceive the difference between the reality of the invisible stages and these levels of consciousness and the illusionary veils. Like here's an example, sleep paralysis. which is defined by the Journal of Sleep Disorders as a state or level of consciousness, and it is. But when people are paralyzed, they go through all kinds of horrific psychological trauma, where it's actually physio-spiritual, where it is literally happening, but invisibly. And when the wife or girlfriend turns over and sees her boyfriend or husband, they're paralyzed. And he's there. If someone could just wake me up, I can't move. That's a weird thing. So he's going through a lot of stuff, and psychologically. But see, you're caught in between a physical world and a spiritual world. His mind was awake in the spiritual side, but his body was rigidly asleep physically, and it has to happen because sleep paralysis also is the preliminary signal for an out-of-body. So at that time when paralysis occurs, if the person can just continue on without emotion, letting whatever events happen, because usually you're never touched or anything. It's mainly psychological. And a lot of times it's seen as a psychological attack. They don't know a lot about sleep paralysis, and they don't like to delve into it. And they also don't like to delve, because it's related to the controller, what the scientists call controller, what I call the controlling agent in charge, an entity that seemingly can go through all these various paranormal rooms and fully control the situation. Scientists, they talk about it in privately, but not publicly. And they purposely left that out because it represented, of course, a God figure or the opposite of a God figure. But the levels of the level of the veils, illusionary veils, and the levels of consciousness are all connected. And the higher your level of consciousness, the more awake you are as you go through the experience, the more you can see between illusion and reality. And it's a full mixture of illusion and reality till it becomes one thing, where a person thinks they're seeing something, and they're literally experiencing something else, just like in the UFO alien abduction thing. Wow. So, but the best practice is through the dreams. And you can have content, you can remember everything. We found 7 memory problems associated with all of these things, psychic experiences. And the best way is to practice those breathings, because they will keep you awake, and you'll be straight. You'll be able to see what's really happening as you go through any kind of dream out-of-body experiences. But mostly they're not remembered. There's a lot of info that's being erased and forgotten, because people won't do the breathings. They'll do everything else, the postures, the right kind of spirit and attitude, but they won't do the breathing exercises. And as your body's slowly going to sleep, those breathing exercises, because it becomes rhythmic habit, and you'll continue on breathing, and that will keep you awake as you begin to slowly separate from your physical body. The astral comes out.
So you concentrate on your breathing. Is it like, as you inhale, it's like, are you imagining it coming through your, the energy coming through your crown chakra, or are you just kind of taking that deep breath? And some people call it like stomach breathing, where your stomach comes up, or is it?
Yeah.
Is that the kind of breathing? It's a deep breath, but it's almost like you're filling your tummy chakra with air, so, and holding it and then exhaling.
Yes, you said it exactly, James, because it's actually best, the way you said it, to actually visualize it in some kind of way, and actually physically do it, especially physically do it through the stomach first and then the chest, because you get 46% more air that way. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people will just do the breathings, and some will just visualize. But just as you just said, the best way to do it is to visualize something positive or energizing as you're doing the literal physical breathing. Because it's those physical breathings that will keep you awake enough where you can walk from one physical world to the interdimensional world and be awake while doing it. And it's I can easily explain what it's like. It's kind of like just where you just merge into the scene. And if something happens, like you have a leg jerk that suddenly jerks, and then you flip awake, you'll be pulled back into the dream process. You'll have to go back to, do it again. But those breathings, most people fall asleep while they're going to sleep and doing the breathings. They get loose, the body gets loose. They're not concentrating. The breathings make them focus on one single thing. And a lot of times you'll be doing the breathings. Most people can't do 18 and stay awake. So that's why you got to do them at the right time. In the morning is really good, but the afternoon is very good. And you don't want to do them when you're too tired because you'll just knock out. You want to be tired, but not dead tired. Like an afternoon nap is the perfect. Or when you wake up in the morning and decide, let me go back to sleep because it's Saturday, that's the perfect time. Then you're much more likely to have an out-of-body in the afternoon or in the morning than at night. You can have them at night, but if you do it while you're slightly charged, because the out-of-body means that the astral body is recharging the electromagnetic energy in the air. And then if you're awake while that's happening, you get to see it happening. And Sylvan Muldoon, the Scottish guy in the 1920s, he explained it perfectly in the right way, because he knew exactly how it was going. And he was right. And it comes up and out, and you recharge your astral in the electromagnetic energy in the air, which is what the Indians call it prana. And also the breathings, you can absorb that energy too. So when you're doing the breathing exercises, the more air you get in your body, like a Darth Vader or any of those villains who super breathe, the much more powerful you are. And it literally electrocharges your body. And so remembering staying awake, and most people are shallow breathers. And you see how the athletes breathe and stuff, and we barely get anything out, maybe 15 or 20%. You see the cross-country runners who never need to stop. So people have to breathe deeply and realize, and especially when they do the meditations and breathing exercises and dream control. If you can get into the dreams and work and get to experience and know what they are and develop them, all the other things will come just from the after effects of having the dream experiences. But the breathings, and they don't really stress that, or else they don't know about it. They don't talk about paralysis a lot. They don't talk about the white lights, all the effects, and what those things really are. There's a lot that they don't know that, and I'm definitely not going to tell everything, but there's enough to show people that, look, there's a lot they don't know, and there's a little that they won't tell you, like about the controller. But I'm not really concerned. I just like to do my own thing, and anyone who wants to know, that's cool. I can. But it's a lot to it. It's a really fun. Most of it's free, and it's a solo, like individual thing where you can do it by yourself. You can go in your room and something you can practice, and the side effects are great. And the ultimate goal, of course, and that's what the mysticism is to consciously unite and connect and merge in with God. And it has been done and can easily be done. A lot of times just depending on the desire of the person. And on the way, all kinds of things that people would want, that people in this earth plane really want, like the powers and the knowledge and to see into the future and all that stuff. You automatically get that when you climb each step to get closer to God, especially if you just only want to be with God. You get those things naturally and strong because he knows that you'll use them in a good way. People who want to say it's someone evil, I want to rule the world, become the president, and then destroy it, and I'm going to use the powers to do it. They're already limited at the amount of abilities that they will be able to acquire, and they will never get. An evil person will never get super strong psychic or mystic powers like that. They won't be allowed to, or they'll be destroyed after getting them. It's interesting that side, but. If the person just seeks the high, you always want to go to the highest level, the highest authority, the thing behind everything, the controller, and just looking his direction and going to him, you'll get everything, all those psychic things that the people in this world really want. But by the time you get those powers and abilities and you're seeking God, you are not even interested in using those things because you see there's a lot more levels to go. There's a lot more. You're not interested in like world things. You want only like invisible higher things and, being in a higher way. But the powers and stuff, that's like silly. When you see that, wow, there's a real God, there's a real afterlife, I can ask any question or do anything to my body and it'll happen. So then that other stuff like gold and stuff, that becomes like meaningless. Like it just disintegrates. It's not like nothing. And then you don't want, it seems like you don't want anything. Like we don't watch TV, we don't, kind of just only want to connect with that God force. It's a really deep thing, but all those other things are given to you if you fully search God. There's a real God. Yeah,
it's crazy. Now, if somebody wants to talk to you about this a little bit further, how can they get a hold of you? You're on Twitter?
I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. I have a America's Mystic Facebook page, and if they want to really talk, to message me privately, and some people do, and I've never met any kind of wild people or bad or hateful people, not even once. And it's been really cool. It's like the people who are into this stuff, they really only want the knowledge and some friendship, but they want the info of the paranormal. And that's what I always wanted when I was young and had to super dig, because we didn't, in actual libraries for the info. And because no church and school was about that stuff, but especially back then, they had other things.
You'd be locked up.
As you remember.
Yeah.
You were probably within the same age group.
Yeah, I think we are.
And it was like back then, if you talked about, I just saw a flying saucer, they'd throw some net over you and call the white Cadillac ambulance.
Yeah, here you go. Oh, we have a place where you can go talk to all your friends.
Yeah, you would not be believed at all. You'd have to produce it. Then they believe it.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing. I'm not going to go out looking for one. You have to prove it to me. Well, that's not how this works. I don't have to prove it to anybody. I know it exists, so you go find it.
Yeah.
It's
and that's a cool thing about.
Oh, go ahead.
That's a cool thing about everyone getting into the paranormal and the spirituality thing, because it can be an individual thing where a lot of it's just you, your own mind, your thoughts and feelings and experiences. It's kind of like a super learning thing where, and the good thing about it, there's after effects that come from just like going into a haunted house that can be rough at the beginning, but usually turn out very beneficial. Usually the person is glad they did it. The after effects are good. Like I used to have a thing in the late 90s where I wanted to get as many psychic powers, psychic energy as I could. So I would go around looking for boosters, things that would super amplify the abilities I had and could further amplify it. So I found a haunted house in Philly that was supposed to be like nationally super haunted. So we went there. I went with 3 other people, 2 guys, a goddaughter, and not Lisa, a Spanish one, and my son, who was like 7. So Lisa, Cindy and Eddie stayed by the car while me and the guys went up. And they were like 19, 16, 17, So we all 3 went up, and we saw behind this haunted mansion, extremely haunted national preserved house and everything, what looked like 3 beams of light. They were as tall as telephone poles, and they were literally like walking, like you'd seen some kind of Casper cartoon. They would look like walking, illuminated, luminous trees. But of course, they didn't have legs. They were just these beams. A month to the day after that happened, we saw a UFO over the Philly airport. And then that year kicked off like the near-death research, and Eddie had a super year too, like with football in school. And but the after effects from that haunted house were super extreme. We were able to make 2 good films there, and we caught a lot of paranormal stuff on films. Like one girl physically changed, hair, eyes, and all, looks 7 times in 11 seconds. We got that on film. And another one super glowed, like her beauty super expanded just from standing in front of the house. And she was seen running from it 3 minutes after we took her there. But the reverse, when we slowed down her footage of her going to the house and coming home from it, the nice, charming Sharon Stone type of city Philly girl turned into some kind of super witch, and even at one point had the witch hat on, James, when we slowed it down in slow motion. So we were able to make a double, one in slow motion and the other in regular speed. And it was deep. She was a believer after that. Her mom had believed in it. So you can go to a haunted house if you want some powers fast. You've got to be able to handle them psychologically. There's places you can go touch this quartz and get the powers, but it's mainly about going to God or the highest power, because then you don't need anything in the world except like your family and the ones you love.
Yeah.
You don't need any material thing. if you want it, he can easily give it to you. And that's a thing, too, I've been working on, this thing called rapid manifestation, where you think of something, you get it quick. It started out with, buses and subways. Like, I can't wait for a half hour. But now I can get it to where I can almost get anything I want immediately, depending on the importance. But those are things that should literally be ignored as you want to get higher into knowing about who he is in a devotional type of way. Because when you think about it, God has made sure everything good that we've had, a lot of it hasn't been our power, it's been an outside power that's happened. It's deep, but it's a worthy thing to look into. It's the highest thing that you can do, like to search to who God is, who I am, what will happen after I die, and who are the aliens. Those are things that must be known, and people want to know too, a lot. Yeah,
there's so much out there. Like, you have so many questions, and that's why I like doing this, because every time I think I get an answer for something, it leads me 300 more questions, and it is kind of fun that way. Now, this is if you're just bumping into us, actually, it's a podcast. You can't just tune in halfway. But I'm going to remind you, we're talking to Eugene Braxton, and if you do want to talk about these things, go to his. If you're on the Facebook, you can go to his Facebook page, America's Mystic. Go to Eugene's Facebook page, America's Mystic. Like his page, and you can send him a DM or a private message through there, and he usually replies within a couple hours. So if he gets that little notification ringing in the background, if he's not out doing a supernatural tour in his head, Eugene, this is kind of cool. One of the things I need to really. I don't really need to, but I really want to. I want you to tell the listener about the experience you had when you were 17 and what developed from there. Now, and just to recap, Eugene has been doing out-of-body stuff ever since he was a kid, like 5 or 6 years old, and he has the ability to actually remember what he's doing when he's in this, in that level, that what's the term? Oh, you're in that vibration.
Dimension.
Yeah, when you're out there floating around, you actually have memory of everything you're doing. Now, jump ahead to the age of 17. What happened then?
You're talking about the near death?
Oh yeah, or I always like calling it a death, because you really did die.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was actually at age 15 in this. Yeah, right before 11th grade, after 10th grade. And I would graduate early. I just turned 17 when I graduated, so got put in the year. But it was 15, so I had already really mastered the out-of-bodies and dreams after having them forced on me for years. I learned how to observe them, acknowledge them, and then control them. So by 15, what became like a graduation of sorts was the near-death experience. And I was an expert swimmer. I swam water polo and straight swimming. I jumped into a lake, and I was a track. I could jump, basketball player, so I jumped up high, came down feet first because of an ear infection, got stuck in the muck underneath the dock, as other swimmers and track stars had in the past. Could not get out. And we used to swim in dams, waterfalls, during a flash flood, so we were strong swimmers. And in those kind of states, Ohio and stuff, that's you're outdoor type of people. And so swimming was like a shark. Couldn't get out. Gulped in huge trash cans full of water all at once. Filled up like you see in the movies where the person fills up. Mm-hmm. Fell down with my knee still stuck in. I slowly died and was able to stoically observe and record and remember everything. Because there was literally nothing else to do except wait there and hope that someone splashed through the water and came down and saw me. But no one ever did. So I watched as the same thing as if you softly falling asleep. And you could, like, the level of consciousness was more like where you were semi-conscious. Mm-hmm. maybe under some kind of anesthetic like that. But you could see what was happening, but you could tell the lack of focus and physical control was getting less. And so I saw that I was going down into a lower level consciousness that would lead to like what I knew, and you can sense like when the person dies, they first struggle for life and death, and then after a point, they experience pain during their struggle. Then after another point, everything shuts off. Any kind of physical pain, I was freezing on the bottom of that lake, it shut off, right, all at once. And I got a warm, cozy feeling. So I still had the physical sensations, but the struggle for life and death is usually over when the pain level suddenly stops. And then you acknowledge that, shit, I'm going to die. And you realize inside this primal fear rises up then, where you realize automatically I'm going to die. Just like if someone has a heart attack or poison in the body. If something comes along to them that something is not right and I'm going to die, you realize it inside and you know it's right. So that's when you acknowledge it and the struggle for life and death stops. Then it's death itself. And if you're lucky, well, or unlucky, depending on how you die, you get to see it happening. I was able to see it happening. And most 6 out of 4 people die by swimming, and then heart attacks and comas, or kind of half and half with that. Those are about the same. But they say 700 people a day now are having near-death experience because the hospitals are used to pulling them back, resuscitating them. And so some even hours, and there's a few even days later. There's a difference between resuscitation and resurrection. Especially a person has a permanent death. And everyone wants to live after death. No one wants to die. But during the death process, it becomes a part where you say, because you might be by yourself, as you this is going to happen, I'm going to die. You can feel it. Not only can you feel a pulling sensation, what it feels like to be a magnetic pull, and it is because it's your astral getting ready to separate from your physical. So there's an electromagnetic pull. A lot of people say they experience the tunnel. You do. The tunnel is actually the feeling that one experiences when their astral body is getting ready to come out of the physical. It's really, instead of being pulled into the tunnel, you're really coming out of the tunnel, which is your body. You might come out of your head or just fully out of your full body, but there's a separation process that happens naturally and involuntarily, just like a leaf falls from a tree. In the reverse way, the spirit body loosens from the physical and floats naturally upward, and it feels naturally without fear or anything. It should be just like swimming, even softer, because it's thought actuated too. You can physically control it, but you can also say, I want to turn my body upside down and it'll spin. So that's, or I want to float backwards, at a certain angle, and or go upward. So you get used to that thought actuation thing after death. So the person naturally separates. They cannot control it. Your body will come out of the physical, whether you're awake or not. And this is what you'd love to see it awake happening. But usually, half the time, the person pops awake about, we found 15 to 22 seconds after they expire fully. When the heart stops, and it will stop at the same time that the hearing stops, then when the heart, which is the electromagnetic center of the body and of the spiritual life force, when that life force cuts off from the heart, which would be like the battery or motor, when that stops, then you're out. They might be able to restart it, but then you're out, and that full separation begins. So most people wake up about 15 feet, less than a basketball hoop, or about the height of a basketball, above their body. And it takes about 15 to 22 seconds for the spirit body to come out, then you float upward. And then you realize there's a realization of time and space. You realize that, wait a second, I exist somewhere in time and space, and I had enough out of bodies. The near death is a spiritual out of bodies. After about 10, 11,000, I had enough out of 12,000 to realize that I'm somewhere in time and space. And as I could see my spirit body rematerializing into an invisibly solid spiritual body. from like a teeming essence. The book fully describes it, like no other book in the world. So the person's spirit body comes out in a teeming essence type of form, like this fizz from a ginger ale. Mm-hmm. And then it rematerializes into a duplicate of itself, which is the real you, into a solidly invisible form. You then realize, the realization of time and space, you realize that you are, and then that you are, that's the kind of time. But the space, you look to see around to see where you are, and you see your dead body, and that reminds you that, damn, I just had a heart attack. Then you realize, but wait, I'm still alive. And then there's usually you may have a brief period to look around and observe your surroundings, which is interesting too. But a lot of times you don't go there, or you might go there without realizing, but you're suddenly in a life review type of setting. And there is a certain order in this. A lot of people, because of their lapses of consciousness, like, in fact, in any spiritual experience, say like a near-death or UFO, when something happens and then suddenly you wake up or find yourself in another location doing another thing, that's a lapse of consciousness, especially in dreams, too. And it's those breathings that will connect those lapses, that it will be a continuity. There will be a single stream of uninterrupted memory of what you did. And in dreams, there's a way to remember that. But getting back to
you're drowning.
The near death. So the person wakes up about 15 feet out of their body, and once you're out of your body, within there's what Muldoon, the 1920s guy, called a cord reach activity. And just like that silver cord that extends to you when you're in out of body form, the holy books describe it as a silver cord. It's like an umbilical cord, a spiritual umbilical cord that is attached to you when you're alive, so that if you stay out in out-of-body form too long, it'll gently pull you back into your body. And if you resist the pull, it'll pull you harder. One time I got yanked out of the sky back in and woke up with a slight headache, but I was all right. So, but once you're far away enough from your body, because there's still a magnetic pull, that physical body wants to live. And also, when you're in out-of-body form, you'll realize, especially if you're doing it during a dream where you're still alive, you'll see yourself breathing. And you can feel your physical body in your invisible spirit body just 15 feet floating away. So there's a dual consciousness, just like people on the operating table. When they're out of body up near the ceiling, they see the doctor sawing on them. And there's no emotion with it. They observe it like you would some kind of TV play. But they can feel the saw. It doesn't really hurt them. They can feel the saw of where the doctor's cutting their physical body in their spiritual body. And they can hear the doctors physically in their physical body, what they're saying, and look up. So you're in both bodies, mentally and physically at the same time. If one of the doctors puts a hand on your shoulder during a surgery, you can feel it physically and spiritually. So and there's also a dual consciousness too. That's interesting. We talked about that a lot in the book. Person, they realize they're dead. And they realize that I'm in a different time, a different space, and the space of the afterlife or astral plane, and the time of death. The person is then usually finds himself in a life review room, a lot of times floating in midair like I was. It's like a tire-sized room. They call it a room, although there's no ceiling and no floor. And the float, anytime you're floating, that's a sign of a dream dimension or astral dimension. Like if you are having an experience, a spiritual experience, and you jump up in the air and come down slowly, you're not in the real world. There are other things like the visionary things too. Like you could look at something and see far, far away. Suppose you were wanted to see what was happening inside your house, but you were in Oregon. You could just look in the direction north, and you'd see exactly right through the window what you want to see. The vision is good. So a lot of what the person's intentions are when they come into those realms is what they'll get. And the higher, the better. Like if a person wants knowledge, they'll go into a realm that is just will give them, and you absorb it, or you can, be taught it too. But it's best You can absorb the cosmic knowledge and the cosmic energy. And again, the breathings and meditations and the focus part of it. See, when you do those breathings and you count them, that helps you to crystalline your focus, where you only focus on one thing, and then you begin to merge in with that thing. When concentrated focus, highly concentrated focus that develops through breathing exercises, naturally enables the person to merge into the essence of another person, place, or thing. So if someone's talking to you, a salesman, let's say, or a guy's talking to a girl for a date, and she silently does her breathing exercises while looking at this guy talking to her, the volume of his words begin to dim down, and his true intentions, nature, character, and stuff is revealed to her mind, and to her feelings. And as he's talking, his words are dimmed down, and the reality of what he really wants is seen. So, like when I say do those breathings, you really should. I did them for sports because they make you super healthy and super strong, fast. Bruce Lee, Mike Tyson. But the other things about them, like you can see right through people. You can see what they're really thinking. You can literally, like there'd be some people talking to me or trying to convince me into something, and I would talk to their inner mind and have and say, let's just stop this idea. Right? Have the inner dialogue with their mind while they'd be physically talking to me. You know, I was really talking to their subconscious. So there's a lot of lot of things to learn and know, except for just like bending spoons or reading people's names or that talking to the dead. That's some. So, not say it does exist, but there's higher levels of learning and knowledge and understanding, especially if you decide I'm going to use like this for good things, either for good for myself, my family, or for others, or just for me and God. It's your intentions and your desire those two can trump anything else. Like there's a lot to want. Like some people just want full health. Some people want whatever you want in this world you can get, and in the astral, invisible world, you can get it immediately there. Like you want an apple in your hand. You can do the same thing here, but it takes longer because of the repercussions of getting what you want. A lot of people change their mind or decide, that's not what they want. And once you have it here, you have to keep it. Like suppose the person, I wish you were dead. A person says that in anger. In the astral world, it wouldn't matter because, you're not going to die. Mm-hmm. And you won't really feel pain. But here, if you got those wishes immediately, the mother or the husband, whoever would be dead. So God slows down the speed of return when a person wants to manifest something. And still, the higher you get into those levels, you get tired of manifesting just things that people get jealous of or that you lose. And then you seek like higher things like full health or happiness or understanding like wisdom. There's so many like things to know, or true peace like with other people. There's a lot of people having a really good life because those are like things that they want. And there's a lot of people having a miserable time, like two twins. One's super successful, handsome and everything. The other's some broken down alcoholic. And it's all because of how they think inside, how they picture themselves and what they want in life. And it's but the lifetime goes short. And so we got to pick well and then also pick who we deal with well. Because people are really tripping out now, and it's good to love them, but it's not always good to fully trust them.
Yeah, trust is an interesting dilemma all in itself, and I've learned to basically go with my gut feeling on trust, and it's been serving me quite well for the last year or so. It's when negative people come towards me, I perceive it coming. And I just let them drift by, and then I cut myself off from anything that's overly negative. Eugene, when you passed over, describe what it looked like when you left your body. What were the what did it look like? What did you see? And then why did you come back in your body?
Okay. I'll do the second one first. A question: why did I come back? Because it sounds like, and I can easily answer. Yeah, the mechanics of what I saw as the death was occurring. That's what you wanted.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
here's what
we kind of went through the mechanics of the death with all the water, and kind of the gross water and stuff you swallowed. But what happened after you kind of looked at yourself from the outside, floating there or stuck in the mud?
Okay. All right, I'll go through that first because there's more to that than just explaining what happened.
Okay.
But as far so the person after the realization of time and space, and they are aware that they exist outside their body. A lot of times they're taken after. A lot of times there's a brief excursion where you're given some free rein to float about and observe your surroundings. Some people say that they see. Often there's a beach type of setting where the person is just like that movie Contact. There's some people who say they meet their family members. And there are or beautiful scenic cities. Often, though, in reality, there's our illusions. You can experience the presence of your loved ones, just like you said about the feelings. And you and I both had that law enforcement thing, and we know that your gut feelings are 10 times more safer than some book or some rule or whatever. Or especially when dealing with people, it's so easy to go with your feelings because you just, like a spider sense, you just naturally know this clown is crazy. And so in those things, it's better to go with the feelings. Your feelings won't, when the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, you know that they're doing it in your protection. So, okay, so where was I?
We were talking. Okay, so
I know it's right near the life. Well, I'll start with a life review because the person is just like transported. Once you realize that, wait, I'm alive. It's after death. I can see my dead body. I did die, but I'm awake again, and I actually feel in the prime of my life. Like some people say, you're over 50. They report the person coming back feeling like a 33-year-old. If you die young, you might come back at the same age. But it's an interesting thing when you're fully conscious in the after-death world. The first thing you're super happy, even though you saw that I just died, even though the real me is actually still awake and I'm not dead. Then comes the life review, where the person's life, in a three-dimensional way, usually on flat screen type of surfaces, is shown to them, just like a deck of cards. We can see all images all at once. And one screen shows everything you ever said, everything you ever thought, everything you ever did, and how you felt when you were doing those things, and how the person, good or bad, that you affected, how they felt, whether they were happy, you gave your mom a present, or whether they were sad, some girl broke up with her boyfriend. You get to feel all the results of what you did throughout your whole life, good or bad, all at once, multidimensionally you feel it. And as you're floating in the air, in what would be like a revolving wheel. And that was interesting too, James. So there are a lot of things so interesting in the afterlife experience that I went to. And luckily, as fate would have it, the world authority, Dr. David Jacobs, would be in Philadelphia and work at the same campus that I worked at. I worked with the police, he worked with the history. And so I walked right over to his building one day to ask him some questions about questions I had about my near death. I wanted to see if he kind of felt the same way, and he did 100%. And so I started working with him one-on-one for 12 years because I saw some anomalies that just suspicious. But the life review, and this is why the person wants consciousness. The more conscious you are in real life, the more conscious you'll be in your spiritual life. Even more so, because you have multi-dimensional consciousness. And when you have a best way to have a spiritual experience is through a dream. You can have that tonight, and the desire is usually the best way. And the better health you're in, like the straighter you go to sleep, the more you can have it. And once you start focusing on anything, especially a spiritual goal, once the focus becomes just that, like that thing where you only want that air because the clown's holding your neck down, you'll get it, and you'll get it fast. So the person wants the desire of a prisoner or of an addict or of some power-hungry queen or king. You want The more you want, the desires can almost trump anything except the intentions in those levels. But because the more you feel for something, the more it hurtles towards you. And when you add focus, a single, most people don't know what they want, even when you ask them. So when you have a specific thing in mind, then you emotionally feel it. It hurtles towards you. You have to be careful what you ask for, though. But getting back to the near death, so the person is shown the life review so that there can be no mistaking the judgment that is about to proceed. And everyone has heard that there's some kind of judgment, and it's not the old kind of judgment you're going to be struck by lightning. There is and you're shown your entire life so that there can be no mistaking, and as you were just shown exactly everything you did, no mistaking when the controller that the scientists call him, or what we would call God, comes to you, and he will come to you in a way that you will understand him as, like a kid may see an old grandpa figure in a rocking chair. Someone else may see like some people may see a sphere shape, what they call spheres of consciousness. I saw them. And someone else a female, a feminist might see a female, a God. So, but it will be God to you, and God will come to you as no person can go to God. It would take too many lifetimes, and they still couldn't do it. So God comes to the person. God, after the life review, God is good enough to forgive. These are some of the stages to forgive the person first. And there are various colors. Colors are really important. That's why I was saying no one talks about the white lights that come after these stages. So he forgives you. And in mine, there were two primary colors, orange and red, one for the full healing, and then the other for God's permanent forgiveness, because he's a good God. And the way that you see him as is the way he will be, but 10 times more. And that's why in the Bible and in all, the belief is so important that Jesus himself specifically exhorted the people to fully believe. Because in that world, if you believe some kind of, so you want your afterlife belief, and you want your beliefs to carry over from physical to the interdimensional, because there is a God, and you get according to what you believe. He's a good God, and he is God. Like, he can control, he can decide if you live, exist, or perish. So God comes, and it's that time. You've been forgiven. You've been allowed, like, say, a Hitler. God acknowledges what you did, and he's big enough to adjust that in some way or the other. But the primary thing, and this has always been said, was if you believe in him. That's where an emotional component seems to come out with the controller. Why? Where a scientist might think, well, why doesn't he just judge me on my merits or my misbehaviors? Where does the belief, why do I have to believe, give the energy of belief to him? So that's like an emotional component where it shows that the God is maybe more than what is surmised, or maybe less. So there were some issues with the control factor of what we would call God. The scientists privately and publicly were worried about it, and so was I. It was like the control aspect, if you're floating in midair, arms stretched out as though you might be on a cross, in a lot of them. There was nothing in any kind of negative way. The control was complete, but soft and gentle, the kind that a person would yield to in the nirvanic heaven, or nirvanic and blissful stages, which are actually a part of going up. There are about 12 stages. We're about at stage number 5 or 6. So anyway,
when you say stages, like when you say number 5 or 6, some people, I call them, what do I call them? We are in the fourth dimension, to be dimensional, or stages. So some people say we're in the, going from the 4th to the 5th, or the 5th to the 6th. But when you get up into the 8th, 9th, 10th, we don't have a body anymore. We're all just pure light. Is that kind of how you see it too?
Yeah. Yeah, see, the higher we go, the more finer we get until we're literally just a speck of conscious, a thought of conscious. A lot of times a person will have an out of body, and they seem just to be a pinpoint of consciousness up in the corner of a room. That's like a very high way. And also, there's a merging part. This is even before you meet God. This is during the white lights, where the person disintegrates completely. There's a scene in that movie Pocahontas where she merges into the wind. It's a perfect scene. I've shown them, and that's what happens. There's a spirit disintegration, which happens during the white lights. There's a lot of things that happen in the white lights, and one of the things that happens is a spirit disintegration, and whenever there's a change in the physiology of the spirit body, there's also a change in one's level of consciousness and a change in dimensional space-time. So if the person whenever a person's spirit body changes or their level of consciousness changes, they're aware that they're on a different dimension. So a different dimension is a different thing than a level of consciousness, because the level of consciousness is an awareness, and a different dimension is a space. It's a locational thing. So when you change your level of consciousness, when you change your level of awareness, your spiritual body will also change, because it has to. Because when you change one of those things, there will also be a change in dimensional space and time. So then you can learn how to control where you can go by changing your thoughts or changing the physiology of your spirit body. And usually by changing your thoughts first, then the physiology will follow. And then at the same time, acting as a triad, the location or distance, the time and space thing will change too, according to your. So one can see that's where the thoughts are super important and controlling of them. I used to imagine myself. So you can imagine yourself like the top of a mountain. So that's why a lot of times you'll see you'll see the image of a mystic or a monk sitting up in some high mountain where you're just staring off into the distance. He's so in that inner world that his spirit body is fully doing something there, and his physical is just sitting there. It's just a bezel to come back into like a coat. Mm-hmm. But there's way more out there than there is here, and you can interact when you're in the spiritual form. You can interact with the world easier than you can physically to interact with the spiritual world. But so there's a go ahead. But yeah, there's a difference between like dimensions and stages, because stages has more to do with a level of consciousness. Dimensions is actually a place where you can go to or send yourself to by controlling your thoughts. And when you control your thoughts and your emotions, then your spiritual body will change. And when those two things happen automatically, acting in a triadish way, then your level of conscious, your location will change, especially if you know where you want to go. We were talking about that earlier. And
so when you went up, so you when you went up,
when I flipped burger,
when you left your body, you go to the up. You went up. You met what you believe is God's source energy.
Yeah, they had.
And that was like, describe that. I think you described it once like a ball of light that came over. You were on a beach and this thing had come towards you. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was the in spiritual form. The approaching of God was seen physically through my spirit in the spirit vision, and I seen it as a sun. It looked like the sun was on the horizon, rising. Without seeing it move, James, it went from the 9 o'clock position to 10 o'clock, then 2 o'clock, and then it was about half a football field, half a soccer field from me, as I floated in the air at the same level. Now, as it rose in the air, my spirit body altered and rose with it, suggesting either like a coordinated relationship to it, or a union relation, or a controlling type thing. But I rose in unison, not on my own volition, with it, and until we were 50, half a football field face to face with each other. When they say like you should meet God in the sky, face to face, that stuff, and see, I didn't have any kind of either any religious deprogramming like that. A lot of people seem to think, and I was moving the phone around, a lot of people seem to think that, that the prehistory of religious going to church and stuff like that, that has nothing to do with it. If people on heroin had nothing to do with it, this trumps every kind of reality. So the merging thing, and they don't mention that. The things that they don't mention, that means they don't know about. Because when you know things, you're going to talk about them, unless you're purposely trying to not reveal everything, like I have to a lot of times, and Stevie Nicks. But so the person, God comes through the person. Their spiritual body alters, and their thoughts and levels of consciousness. The purity of their thoughts and the body changes. Those red and orange lights that heal and forgive you also cleanse and alter you to prepare you, physically cleanse the dirty humans because of all kinds of thoughts, deeds, and get-overs. What can I get from God? Yeah. So they physically cleanse them in preparation for a meeting with God. And you're being washed and stuff because your thinking is different. Your body is, heart's strong, and you can see that you're being washed and ready for something higher, something really high, because you're floating in air too, and it feels normal. So usually the person goes through the white lights as a final cleansing, a super spiritual cleansing. The white light is the strongest light of any of the spiritual colors, and it has the strongest after effects that get stronger in you year after year after year for the rest of your natural life. And this is when the universal consciousness comes in, and the feeling that you're merging with the universe, because you are. This is where spirit disintegration comes in, and this is where the beginning of nirvanic bliss and happiness, which are illusions. And the book 2 explains more about that, because for every reality, there's also a secondary, opposite, and often illusionary reality. And that holds same for the near-death, life after death, and UFO abductions. And we saw that in the book. The book is really good. I should do a couple of quotes from it. But so throughout my near-death, throughout all these things, I was looking for the source, the power, the controlling thing behind it. And you can best observe something without emotions. And I used my feelings and more than my physical. I recorded everything visually, but I used the feelings, especially later on when I reflected on it, to fully analyze exactly what had happened. You'll experience a dream, and then later on that day, when you reflect upon the dream, a lot of times you'll see it in a different or slightly or more, educated or more awake way. You'll understand it better on reflection, Yeah. And so that's the same thing with the near-death. The near-death is what it is, but it's way more than what it is. And so
it is what it is, but it's way more than it is. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, before, who could explain the near-death better than me before I came on the scene? I've been on the scene for 22 years. I worked with the best world authorities. Ibn Alexander said he had proof of heaven. All his colleagues in his field of research, and the record came out against him. For medical reasons, for not. No one's come out against me because I worked with their superiors. I worked with the world authorities in their own fields and went above their heads.
Yeah,
and it's exactly right.
Talk about that.
To the detail, Jim.
Yeah, after you had this near-death experience, you actually went through a heck of a lot of tests. In some, basically, you're in some scientific journals and things like that too. You've been studied. University kind of showed up and said, "Okay, come over here. You think you had a near-death experience? Well, we're going to plug you into whatever machine or do whatever they did." What did they do to verify that this is what really happened?
Yeah, just like a lot of times, like when someone, like with me, because I've done it a lot of times with people, and with Dr. J, I've seen him. So, and with the near-death. So, if you know your subject well, like say you with the Mounties, you know. And suppose you came upon someone, yeah, James, I used to be a Mountie too. You could ask him 4 to 6 questions and ascertain whether he really was, don't you think?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So the same with any kind of, especially a world authority, where usually no one really gets to, you're selected, they invite you to work, to work with like a world authority, even a scientist, especially a world authority, you have to be like selected. They have to know who you are. You have to actually have had a legitimate experience happened. You have to be able to explain to them what happened in a clear, a concise, scientific way. You have to be able to have a good memory. You have to know their work inside and out. And so anyone who gets with the science, I was invited by Grayson. I thought he was like a regular college doctor, like the University of Connecticut or Penn State or whatever. So I accepted his invitation, then looked on, well, exactly who is he and what is this University of Virginia? Turns out he was like the Dean of International Near-Death. So instead of telling him that I had a near-death, instead of telling him what happened, I said, let me tell him exactly what happened. After some time, and a warning from another world authority, it seemed like he was only interested in what he could extract from me. He's like the Baron Frankenstein of the near-death research. I saw that. Also, I was warned to copyright my information because they would try to steal it. Someone would try to steal it, especially, and I had stuff they had never heard about too, or even imagined. So he did. Grayson did try to steal it. So I knew it in advance because I mean, how can you trick a mystic?
Yeah.
And you know, I'm going to steal from you. Yeah, okay. So I thought I was warned by another will, and I said, let me test him. I didn't know that. I said, let me test him, just like Andy. I used to work with the police. I said, let me give him reverse information and see if he does steal it, to see if the other person was right about this theft. Because I believed it, because I used to work in film, and they'll do it in film. So I figured, yeah, doctors. There was a near-death guy who waterboarded his own daughters to try to get the information from them. You know, the guy in Delaware. So I put reverse information, and this is why. And sometimes you'll put information out, someone will steal it, and later you'll see it turn up in real life. So I told him, when a person dies, if they go into death with the mindset of being afraid, of being happy, or whatever, mindset will prevail over death. And that's not true. That was the opposite of what's true. So I put something also, and now I gave him the length of time between death and life and reconsciousness after death. They didn't even have terms like reconsciousness after death. I had to make all those new terms up. And I made them up in a way where if any future researcher in the future were to try to copyright my stuff and use it in this research, which we're fully always watching for, they would have to almost literally use the same definition because it's so precise, or make up one so close that I would be able to see. But no one has, because they would have to back up what they say, and a lot of people just can't.
Yeah.
The experiencers love it because they've gone through those things, but the scientists can't. Like if someone questions them about something that I've written in my book, there's no way they can fill in what it is. It would take them 30 years to just understand it. But the experiencers, who a lot of them have had these things happen, automatically recognize it. But we were talking about that. There's so many things, like you said, the merging part is really interesting. You can merge into a fellow person as well as merging with God.
I wouldn't. So you got studied by this Bruce Grayson guy, Dr. Bruce Grayson, Atwater, near-death experience person.
Yeah. Yes. See, there's like formal research, informal research, and then casual or personal. With Grayson, it was the formal type, which everyone likes. You want to be invited by the white lab coat guy, fully invited with paper. It was a personality study / near-death questionnaire, which would be followed up by interviews. You go down there, they assess your personality, and then, but mainly to see what happened. The questions were really interesting, and to see what information could be yielded from the subjects, who were then to be subject number 49, a case B. Mm-hmm. The subjects would not get any attention, which I didn't care about back then. And really, when they work with these scientists, none of them do. They're just thrilled to be working with Grayson, Atwater, or Jacobs. That they don't care, sign it, do whatever, sign your life away. But the information is so valuable that if Grayson is a good one, like he'll take the information and then write journal books or figure out psychologically what's happening. But some of them just quickly go and write books, and they're seen on Oprah talking about da 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 da, and the experiencers never get none of that, and they're only half right. They if you go they make it look like they've solved something. Really, they just reiterated what some subject from Georgia said, but never got the credit. So now the experiencers are learning to keep their own data, at least till they understand it. Like I didn't talk about my stuff for about 40 years. Because first you weren't allowed to when we were kids, and then mine was so different. I said, I don't see like Elvis and stuff like that. I didn't see no one after death, except God and spirit. I didn't see people walking around like that. And
yours was a private experience, because I think everybody's is private.
It's a private, personal
part. Yeah, the first part is going to be private, and if you end up staying there, you may see a little bit more. But you weren't supposed to be there anyway. So when you're getting punted back, it's you never got past the waiting room.
I went into the merging like a person. The ultimate desire, even the ultimate natural inclination, is to mix back in with where you're from. So in that spiritual realm, just like to go to the light, in that spiritual realm, the natural inclination is to mix into the source of everything, because you're magnetically pulled there anyway. As the person goes into the white light and they see their spirit body disintegrating, they realize that they're going dimensionally into another location. That's where you can tell if you're dimensionally traveling, because there will be a slight lapse of consciousness or immediate change of scenery, or your spirit body will begin to change. And you can look at it and see the change in it. So when it changes from solidly invisible to semi-speckled and then to a teeming fine mist, those are spirit body changes that will result in a locational change. But it's easier to change the location by changing your thoughts than it is to physically change the spirit body. It happens naturally. Just like if you pinch yourself, it'll be a change in your physical. So you have to, it all thoughts with the thoughts. But there's a lot of, the white lights, the merging. And once you experience that merging process, which comes from full concentrated focus until you become one with it. They talk about become one with it. You literally do. Like I was staring at this squirrel because I saw that he was staring at me. I didn't like that. Okay. And then all of a sudden, I was in my late 30s. I shot into him. My spirit spontaneously came out of my body, and there's spontaneous out of bodies. I went into his psyche, James, saw him for a megasecond, looking at me through his eyes, and then shot back into my body. And that happens after spiritual experiences. That stuff happens naturally. Like cross-country runners have been running and suddenly found themselves 22 feet over their bodies, seeing themselves run along the trail in the woods with the other runners for a split second, then shoot back down. That started happening in junior high, and maybe from the teens to about the 30s. That's an interesting thing. And so you have spontaneous out of bodies, and then controlled out of bodies and uncontrolled out of bodies. The uncontrolled out of bodies a lot of times are connected with UFO incidents, and that's a thing too.
Yeah, let's get into your UFO issues you've had since then.
Okay. It's been a good one.
So just to recap, Eugene Braxton and the type of stuff that you've bumped into over time, Eugene, is is basically you drowned when you were 15. You quote unquote died. You went up, and because of your ability to remember all those out-of-body experiences you had as a kid. You remembered everything of this out-of-body one like it was an out-of-body experience, and you went up to source energy, God, whatever anybody wants to put a name on it, and was basically told, hey, buddy, off you go, and you end up slamming back into your body and kicking yourself out, and I guess even though it probably seemed like you're gone a couple hours, it was probably a few seconds before you pop back up. But since then, and this is kind of interesting because a lot of my psychic friends who have had all sorts of reboots during their life over and over again, they've died numerous times, and they do have that. I've died, I went up, I got told it wasn't my time, got told to come back, and every time they leave their body, they're getting an upgrade. Like they're on iOS 26 or something now, but they come back, and all of a sudden their psychic ability or whatever ability they had in the metaphysical is or parapsychological is now ramped right up. So you had your thing when you were 15, and since then, you've had some UFO or alien experiences. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. Near death at 15, and then the after effects of that too. I won't wish too much, but there were some after effects that at first were negative, like some neurological things where my arm was twitching, where I couldn't run track that next year. Then exploded in 12th grade, so near death at 15. Then at 17, this is right around the time Fleetwood Mac came out. I was out of school and kind of went through like because I was a year younger. I went to college, but still had like that difficult transition from teen to adult. Mm-hmm. So, and then the family was in transition where Dad had left, the younger brother was raising hell, and Mom was stressed out. I was working. So, and then I was young, and I was having these background psychic experiences all on top of that stuff. And as far as trying to figure out who I was. And why these things were happening, and how to control them, because I couldn't fully control them, not till the 20s. So when I finally got the near-death balanced out, and still they didn't, I graduated in 76, it wasn't until 78 where the term came out, 77, near-death, and people died. So I realized that something, I always remembered what it was and knew it was real, but science didn't start talking about till late 70s. So anyway, at age 19, I was driving with a friend in Kent, and Kent's like in Ohio and Pennsylvania are super haunted places, as other states are. But we were riding with a friend, Roger, and we this was right around dusk, 8:15, 8 o'clock, a summer night, and we saw one of the disc-shaped UFOs floating over a baseball field that everywhere they all play Little League baseball. The main baseball field in the town. I said, Roger, look. And we stopped the car, and I got out of the car and put my hands on the hood, sat, through the window with my hands on the hood, look, to get a full look. Time kind of froze. We could see car lights on the right of us, but they froze too. And then all focus was on this UFO. There was a lapse of consciousness, because the next thing we knew, the thing was soaring up. Everything froze. And this is on a normal town street, avenue, where we should have cars every 6 seconds on both sides. And no cars went. And that was rare for like a summer night in this town. It's a university town, a party town, and all that. So a college town. So Roger and I both had some interesting after effects, like I burst out crying a week for no reason after that, dreams and out of bodies. But so I had the near death, the UFO, and then it's good when you have these experiences to not go and run and tell people, but to watch them for like between 2 months and 2 years afterwards, because they may lead to something else, like the haunted house. that we had in my 30s led to another UFO sighting that would happen in Philly. This one was in Ohio. And even back then, I had begun to get into the spiritual, and I wanted more experiences. I had, in conjunction with the out-of-bodies and paralyzations and dreams as a kid, certain experiences that would be abduction-related dream experiences and semi-conscious experiences, to the extent where I knew that they were also messing with the astral body. And I knew that back then, but now they're talking about it much more and normally. This is something that the UFO researchers, the good ones, the big ones, back in the 40s and 50s, knew that they were doing. And even the FBI knew in 49. And today's researchers, where they're, some of them literally look like Dr. Jacobs. I was trying to tell him, and he kind of understood that, look, there's a spiritual side to the UFOs, and he kind of only believes in the physical side where they come from, actual metal ships from actual rock planets. And I was telling him, like, look, how could they go through solid walls if they weren't spiritual? It's not a thing that happens in the world. So with that UFO thing, I saw that they were working on the spirit body more so than on the spirit. You know, they might, like Barney and Betty Hill, who we knew, they would abduct them and, do it physically. But the more clandestine way, the more sneaky way, the more where they can extract much more DNA and energy is by working with the spirit body. That's the housing of the soul and the soul's energy, which is what they really want and are really getting. That's why a person would go to sleep at 10 o'clock at night, wake up at 9 o'clock the next day and feel drained, because they were drained. And either blank out or put in some kind of dream memory where they were running down the street holding hands with some alien. There's a super negative side to this. In the same way that there's a negative side to the near-death, the researchers literally refuse to talk about it. There's a super negative side to the UFO thing that today's researchers, it's like not in vogue to discuss. And Dr. J was one of them who saw the reality of some of the physical things happening, and when he talked about it, the other clowns kind of scorned him out. And as one of the few, even Mac noticed some disturbances. And the further back you go, Jung, Hynek, they knew these things were not happening, and they were suspicious, sneaky, not truthful, and this is not a cool, even in the churches and the religions of every religion say that these things are negative, interdimensional beings that are literally harvesting off of us. And in essence, mystically, that is what they are.
Wow.
Because during my sleep experiences and dream experience, all through the young years and the 20s and the teens, and these things are super. It's not cool. It's like the dark side of the UFO. And so they slide in as dreams. They slide in as sleep paralysis. When you have a dream where I was being held down or I couldn't run, those things, when you know more in experience, there's a lot of things that we think are innocent that are not so innocent. And they come invisibly. They come through the night. They work on the astral body. That's what they want. Here's what they want: eternal soul. They want eternal life, and they can get it through the energy of the human being's soul, which is so powerful that it can carry a human throughout eternity. They know that and can get it. It's in one interview where the lady asked me, how do you think that they get it? And she said, spiritually, electromagnetically. And, it would be done through the spirit, and which is electromagnetic in nature. And also an osmosis absorption process, which is done through direct thought and with a mixture of focus, willpower, and desire. There's a lot of deep, interesting. It's a fascinating field to work in, both of them. And one person said, why do you work in the near-death and the UFO? Because they're intricately interwoven, especially when you understand the reality of the near-death. Then you can see better into the UFO. Like Dr. J, he said, I know nothing about near-death, and he didn't. And I questioned the UFO, the near-death world authorities. They knew very little about the UFOs. The NDE guys didn't know much about the UFO, not like the UFO experts. But the public knew more about both subjects than the doctors do. That's why it's best to have a researcher, doctor, experiencer like PMH Atwater, who's actually died. And her research advanced near death from the late 70s to the 90s to the 2000s. Super. It would have died without her. And now my research is doing the second thing, and she is the one who brought me in to make sure I had a fair and even shot.
Okay.
Because she had to push her way into it. So it's a deep thing, but it's so valuable. All that. Because just like you said, I want to know so much when I was a kid. The more you want to know, it'll come to you. All you have to do is know exactly what you want. Most people don't know what they want. That's when you know what you want, you get it quick.
Do you have a tendency to see spirits too?
I've seen some, yeah. When I started out, all my experiences were inner. And after a while, I said, I want to have some outer stuff happening. After I was older, cemented, 24, 25, I had some outer stuff happen. I want to see chairs move across. So it did start. There's various levels of consciousness, from fully straight to angry or depressed, or to partied out. I have seen things like I've seen shadow people. I've seen, one time I was laying on my back, I seen what looked like three little Smurfs. I swear, they were dancing and skipping right across my chest. And it looked some kind of 3D cartoon animation. I said, what the hell is this? And so I let them skip across, and as soon as they got to the other side of my chest, they kind of disappeared into those things. But when you see those things, you do let them happen, because once you once your conscious mind starts to focus, a lot of times they'll dissolve and go away. So you have to kind of just let yourself hang in that altered state for a few seconds. And just like when you see those shadow beings, like I was watching TV late one night, cable, and on the corner of my eye, I seen something running across. I could see the feet literally running, against the baseboard, the white. And when I looked down, it was gone. I said, shit, because I had seen that before. I said, all right, I'm going to pretend to watch the screen again. And when I see it running this time, I'll just look with the peripheral. And I'll be damned if it didn't go down the other baseboard, going the other way in the room, and run. And if you look with the peripheral, not straight on, you'll be able to see them. And I thought I had heard of them. I didn't believe them when I used to hear them on Art Bell and stuff, but I saw that they were real in, when was this? Yeah, the early 2000s. I was like, I've wanted that outside physical stuff to happen. Started too. But with it's when the person focuses on something, that's where that merging, the focus and the merging are brother and sister. Because when you focus on something so much, you do become one with it, mentally or physically. And they don't know, but that's another thing that they need to talk about, and I will talk about more.
And you do. You're a chatty young man.
Yeah, well, thanks, Tim.
Yeah, and if anyone's looking for his book, American Mystic Solves Near-Death Riddle, you can find that on Amazon, or just Google it, American Mystic Solves Near-Death Riddle, and it'll pop it up. It's very, very interesting. It's an interesting life you've had. Of course, we all, you grow up, you have a family, and things go on, and from somebody who is literally found on a snowy church step as a baby and put up for adoption, that's you've had your own challenges before you even knew they were challenges. I wonder if they were even challenges. You were just kind of gifted. You were gifted a very, very interesting. I'd love to know more about hindsight. You'd love to know where you get this ability from, but you can't, right? You'll never know.
I think like one Dr. Ring, that near-death guy, one of the near-death world authorities, he's one of the ones who sat with Oprah. Well, Grayson, the actual white coat lab guy, the Peter Cushing, was fully working. I said, Grayson's working 24/7, Ring's sitting with Oprah. Yeah, I just told him that to make him mad, but.
Yeah,
and James, what was the question?
It wasn't a question; it was a comment. But other than it's too bad you couldn't find out where you get this ability to easily connect to the other side.
I do.
Oh,
I do. I
out?
asked for it.
Oh,
yeah, I know.
Oh,
yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah. Yeah, I asked for it when I was 9. I asked God, and when kids they really believe and they really are sincere. So I asked God. I was walking home, and the winds were blowing the tree in front of our backyard. We lived in one of those silly alleys where, there's a road home. So pretty nice, though. So I saw it was a nice, breezy, bloomy day. So I said, God, if you'll show me all these invisible things in the invisible world, more than any man or king knows, then I'll always tell people about you. I promise. If you show me all the things that more than anyone who ever lived ever knows, I'll tell people about you all the time. And I swore he kept his promise, and I kept mine. And so that's where, and then, that's when it really, I always wanted those things, and I knew that God could let me know if I asked him. And I made him, I swear, I will tell people about you, because I knew that if he showed me those things, I knew that he would be real. And it says you're allowed to test God, like Moses tested God. He wanted to see it, and God showed him himself. If you want to test God, you're allowed to. He welcomes it. God doesn't force this stuff on you. Like people, you shouldn't believe in God. You should, and they see what kind of condition the world is. But God gives you almost anything you want for free, and he's already helped you fully, and you still don't believe. Those kind of people are like, you just feel bad, and you really shouldn't even. You shouldn't even involve yourself with people who are not in with God or the higher thing or in a positive way, because it's just too much darkness in the world. Just like a spiritual battle between good and evil, and it's a serious one. And people realize that there are invisible things affecting people. People are just freaking out, taking axes and axing the whole family, but raping animals and stuff, Yeah. On the front steps of their own house. The cops had to pull this clown off. So there's something affecting us more than just these 5G towers. It's a battle for the soul.
Yeah, there's some stuff going on a much deeper connected side than we are aware of it at this point. Things are changing, and I think people who are a little bit more sensitive to the other side are being allowed to see a little bit. I have friends of mine who are allowed now, well, not allowed, but they've seen horrible things in the future coming if we don't get our collective shit together and start living with the earth and quit living off of the earth and fracking and mining and pushing people around. It's we're damaging the planet we live on, and the planet we live on is it's already got its back up, and she's going to bite us in the ass. And it's there's some very geotechnical things that are in the future, and let's keep hoping they keep getting pushed back further and further and further, as long as we have a conscious effort to try to keep the planet in working order. Because it's getting to the point where it's going to just shake it's going to be like a dog shaking itself and flicking the fleas around, because us fleas are driving this planet crazy, and it's just going to get rid of us. And the few people are going to stick around, but a lot are not. They're going to be it's going to be a cleansing. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be. I don't think it's true. You're true. I don't think it's going to be the flood kind of cleansing where everyone got cleaned except one family. But it's about time we had a good. This planet needs an enema.
Yeah. A pinpoint cleansing where, laser beam points, will be. They'll just be gone in the twinkling of an eye.
Oh, it's going to be bigger than that. It's going to be like, you live on the West Coast? Oh, I hope you're 200 feet above sea level. What? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I really... God, I'm bad vibes from that.
Yeah, move to Arizona, and you might get some good beachside property in a couple of years, so who knows. Eugene Braxton, This is interesting. And I know we have a tendency, because sometimes I do it, but we free think, and when I ask you a question, you answer it, and then you build up around it and build up around it and build up around it. And I know you, so it's I've talked to you before, and it's either one of us is usually doing all of the talking. So I let you run today. And I'm going to have you back, and then I'm going to do all the talk. No, I better not do that. But we're going to talk a little bit more about. I'd like to get you in and keep in touch with you and see how everything's going. Especially if you're bouncing around any more UFOs or you're getting any visitations from spirit, from angels, from a ghost. Who the heck knows? Let me know, and we'll have a chat about it. But it's been really nice to talk to you again. Like I say, it's been like a couple of years since we got together, and I know it's kind of hard because, you've told these stories over and over and over and over again. It gets to a point where it's like, oh, okay, what did I miss, or what did I? But again, if anyone wants to look at his book, The American Mystic Solves a Near-Death Riddle, and I say solves, well, it says solves on it, and honestly, it's like when someone says, "Oh, do you believe in ghosts?" Well, I've seen ghosts, so that's solved. It's like you, yeah, I have died and I have come back. Solved. Yeah, I understand how it works.
Wait. A lot of people say stuff, but when you work with the three top world authorities in the world, in their fields, and then you go above them and literally tie up the strings to it, and no one else has, not to that degree, and with those kind of world authorities, then you can say it's solved.
Yeah.
And not one has come against it, not one even experiencer or researcher, not one world authority, because they can't. It's too right. And it's not like I wrote it. It's like God wrote through me. And it's too right. Did you get the book?
Yes.
Yeah, well, it's super detailed. They don't have near-death journals that are that detailed, because I worked with the dean of Near-Death International asked me to help him with his research. There's no other book like it in the world. That's why it sells on Amazon for $800 a book. Clinton, Prince Charles, Al Pacino, they all checked it out, the world authorities. This is not no regular near-death book, and the information is not regular near-death research. It's super good. And you watch book 2, it's going to include that and even more. It'll show you the reality of the near-death. So this is not like some psychic saying, I see the dead, or some, this is a real thing, the real researcher with the actual world authorities. Go to PMHF or to ask Dr. Jacobs. I have pictures with them. I've been in their office. Used to work with the police. This is no clown like pretending to do something. This really happened. Now, if I look like, say, a Brad Pitt, can you imagine? There'd be ticker tape parades every month. So, but scientifically and realistically, it did happen. And I don't, definitely it's something I don't want is some kind of attention like the kind that the Stevie Nicks gets. I'd rather not have that. I don't want that. So it works out. It always works out perfect with God. I'd rather have because you have people who say that there's something, but they know when the show's over that I really can't talk to the dead. Mm-hmm. Even though I just told an audience I did. I'd rather be able to say I can do this and I did do it, than be able to pretend that I'm some mystic. I'd rather be able to have the scientists say you're a mystic than me to call myself a mystic and only have words. I have the research behind it with the actual doctors. And those doctors don't work with they don't work with other near-death researchers, and only super experiencers. So the fact that connected with them, and I knew that people would want a scientist connected with it, and I knew that they would want the mystical side. So I'm the mystical side, they're the science side, and you have to be sharp with them.
Yeah. Yeah,
this is not some, clown on TV saying I'm really the guy, and I've been like that for 22 years, and now we're going to do the same for UFOs. So this is no. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was talking to. Well, I was at this UFO conference a couple of weeks ago, talking to a lot of people, a lot of documentarians. Jeremy Corbyn, who wrote and filmed a documentary about Bob Lazar, the fellow that was doing reverse.
Oh yeah.
His reverse. What do you call it? Oh my God! His reverse engineering on found UFOs, and talk to Bob, and these guys are like connected. And so when I say connected, it's like you actually touched a UFO. You're looking at me like, yeah, that's what I do or did. But they're fantastic sources of information. It's just getting the information out, and I think their documentaries are that way inclined to doing that. I should fire your book off to Jeremy and see if he wants to go off on that tangent. That would be kind of cool. Have your story as a documentary and follow that that event or event, all your events that you've been connected to over your lifetime. But I really want to thank you, Eugene, for dropping by, because this was a good catch up, and we'll definitely chat again. And I will give you a shout in a few months, we'll catch up again and see how everything's going on the UFO side.
Yeah, James, thanks. The or other that we did a few years ago, that out-of-body one, that was really detailed. Probably my first or second best ever. And this one was a really good one, too. It'd be interesting to hear the stuff, because it always sounds different. But you were able to pull out a lot of information without me, having to speed through it, or it's enjoyable, like the way I can tell you a lot of stuff and be allowed to explain it without it being forced or hurried.
You channel. I look at it as you almost channel things. We do the show, or try to do it for about an hour and 20 minutes, and we're up to almost 2 hours now. So it's interesting. It's when you get going, I just step back and listen, and then make some notes, and then come back and say, okay, explain that again. Explain the veils again. Explain, the mid-range and the other dream. It's like you're dreaming, and it's good. It is good. And don't worry about the times where you're going like, okay, what was the question? Because that's we're the guys that we're sitting on the porch having a beer, and somebody's listening to the conversation, and if you don't keep up, we're going to pass you. So that's the way it is. Yeah. So thanks again, Eugene. Eugene Braxton. Go to his American Mystic Facebook page, Eugene Braxton. Also, look for his book, American Mystic Solves Near-Death Riddle. Amazon. It's a great book. And not enough pictures, but that's just me.
Yeah.
If I don't have pictures in a book, I'm going to take a month to read it. So
do they charge you for them?
Yeah.
They charge for everything. I'm like, what the hell? So we put what we could.
Yeah, it's good. I liked it. Thanks again, Eugene. You have a wonderful week.
All right, thanks, James.
That's it. Let's roll. And hey. Let's be careful out there.
Far over the snow, what are those voices? They sing as they go. What are those voices? Look up for the mountain. throw your gun away. Here come the Mounties to get the man.